Resuming debate, the honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canada has made remarkable recovery from COVID recession. Economic growth, Canada's economic growth is best among the G7 countries. About 830,000 more Canadians are employed today than before pandemic. And inflation has been falling for the last 8 months, and unemployment is at the record low. And we have got labor force participation from women aged 25 to 54, a record high at 85.7% in February. But we also face many challenges. Globalization, as we knew, is on the way downhill. We see a sort of Cold War era returning to the world now. The unipolar world is no more there, is bifurcating into bipolar or even tripolar world. Multilateral agreements that were the basis for the global trade, that is also taking a backseat with WTO. The WTO appellate body is almost not functioning, with vacancies not getting filled up due to some issues by some major countries. What we are seeing now is more of a bilateral trade agreements or the free trade agreements among a block of countries, and we are also seeing more of a friendshoring. In fact, this concept of friendshoring is just starting up. While it is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for us. Protectionism is growing. Is not just from the traditional countries which were practicing protectionism like the developing countries. Protectionism is growing from basically from the developed countries, especially countries like United States. Artificial intelligence, few years back, had talked in this chamber on the importance of artificial intelligence, how this technology is not only going to affect the corporate sector, is not only going to affect the economy, but it's going to affect the entire society. We are already seeing the effect of that impact of artificial technologies and technologies like robotics, automation, having their effect on the society. Madam Chair, I'll be sharing my time with the member from Richmond Hill. And Chair, talking from the budget, which talks about transforming challenges into opportunities, it mentions that there's a need for investment to manage the structural changes, which will not be limited to one sector or one aspect of the economy. Broad-based investment will be required to grow our economy and create good middle-class jobs in the years to come. The scale of required investment is massive, and the private sector alone is unlikely to mobilize the level of capital required in Canada at sufficient speed. Though we say that the private sector alone cannot mobilize, it is expected that the private sector will invest about $100 trillion between now and 2050 in the global clean economy. $100 trillion, Madam Speaker, that is going to be invested by private sector between now and 2050 in the global clean economy. Many of the investments that need to be made will stretch over decades and involve high upfront costs, and that is where the governments come in. Moreover, key sectors and technologies will have a significant spillover effects by driving development of related industry. For example, fundamental inputs to clean production and the production of clean technologies such as electricity, critical minerals, and carbon capture, utilization, and storage will provide foundation for an expanded clean economy. For related sectors such as hydrogen and clean manufacturing, this will boost productivity and support resilience and help generate new middle-class jobs. Private investment decisions may not take full account of these spillovers, which increases the risk of underinvestment. Without the right policy framework, as stated in the Budget 2023 document, Canada could see underinvestment in critical areas and a slow pace of innovation in new clean technology. Together, these would result in Canada falling behind the United States and other countries that are moving forward aggressively to build their clean economies, create middle-class jobs, and ensure more prosperous futures for their people. Canada must act decisively to ensure it remains the location of choice for new investment in these sectors, particularly in the face of recent passage of U.S. Inflation Reduction Act. In addition to this Inflation Reduction Act, we also have to take notice of the U.S. Science and Chips Act, which is a $280 billion act, which though focused 80 billion of it focused on the manufacturing of semiconductors in the United States, but it also invested in around 20 technology centers from transition energy to biotechnology to other advanced technologies. And we have to be, this combination of IRA and the US Science and Chip Act is called the once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation policies of the United States, which has fundamentally rewritten the entire industrial policy of the United States. We also have to take into consideration the friendshoring that the US is emphasizing now, and that is a challenge for many countries in the world, but it creates opportunities for Canada, which we are already seeing in the critical mineral sector, which I'll talk about it in a minute. Budget 2023 proposes substantial measures as the next steps in the government's plans to crowd in new private investment by leveraging public investment and government policy. The goal of this approach is not to substitute government for private sector, nor supplement market-based decision-making. It is to leverage the tools of government to mobilize the private sector. This approach is not about government picking individual corporate winners in an effort to engineer preferred vision for the economy in 2050. That approach did not work in the past and is even less likely to work in today's environment of rapid technological change. The tax incentives and investment supports proposed in Budget 2023 are designed to set a framework for boosting overall investments while leaving private sector to determine how best to invest based on market signals. Madam Speaker, Canada has been rich, prosperous due to the natural resources we have and the hard work of several generations of seniors, several generations of Canadians, including present-day seniors. However, the future is changing. Future is changing with the digital economy and with the new technologies that are coming up, and we have an opportunity in these challenging times to invest and grow. And one growth aspect there is the critical minerals, which are very key, which are very important for the clean economy that is being envisaged all across the world. Before touching on that, I just want to mention that the two fundamental challenges which I said. First, many of the investments that will be critical for the realignment of global supply chains and the net zero future are large-scale, long-term investments. The second challenge I have already mentioned is the US IRA and the related Science and Chips Act. Budget 2022, last year, we committed $3.8 billion for Canada's critical mineral strategy. March this year, last month, the government launched Critical Minerals Infrastructure Fund, a new fund announced that will allocate $1.5 billion towards energy and transportation projects needed to unlock priority mineral deposit. In addition to this funding, federal government is entering into bilateral agreement with various provinces. Recently, we signed an agreement with Ontario, what we call as Ontario Table, where the federal government and the province committed to align, to work together to align the resources on the timelines and have a common regulatory approaches in promoting the critical minerals required for the clean economy. At this point, I also have to mention that though we have critical minerals, though we have announced investments, though we have already attracted investments in the battery manufacturing, electrical vehicles manufacturing, we still have the stumbling block of the long regulatory process that are required to see a critical mine start becoming operational. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm here to answer any questions that may.
Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Peace River Westlock.
Madam Speaker, one of the things that I'm concerned about is the $43 billion deficit that is projected by this budget this year. Back in 2015, when the Liberals took power, they promised that they would run 4 consecutive deficits of only $10 billion, and after that they would return to a balanced budget. I'm just wondering why this member continues to support deficit spending, and if he does not, and what does he think that this has an impact on inflation? Thank you, Madam Chair.
The Honourable Member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Deficit of $43 billion, we have to look from the angle. Let's take the way I look at it personally. For me, as a working Canadian, loans I don't like. I don't like credit card loans, but I do like the mortgage because that helps me invest in my long-term future, in my long-term assets. The deficit that we are having here is basically going towards the long-term investments that are required for Canada, for us to continue to be competitive in this world, for us to improve the long-term transportation network, for us to invest in long-term things required for the clean energy growth. So these are the kind of long-term infrastructure-related investments that are required, and those are the things that primarily are contributing to the deficit we are having today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Des commentaires, l'honorable député de Repentigny.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je remercie mon collègue pour son discours qui a fait référence à plus d'une reprise à l'Inflation Reduction Act de nos voisins américains. Dans le document d'accompagnement du budget, celui qui s'intitule « Énoncés et rapports sur les répercussions sur le genre, la diversité et la qualité de vie », on retrouve à la page 59 « Exploration future du pétrole et du gaz extra-côtier dans l'Arctique ». Eh bien, est-ce que c'est justement pour suivre le président américain qui annonce des forages en Alaska que le Canada veut se lancer dans cette aventure qui est autant inacceptable, qui est inconcevable quand on pense à l'environnement et quand on pense au futur?
The Honourable Member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we were discussing the Inflation Reduction Act in our International Trade Committee, one union leader put it very neatly and simply. He said, we cannot match the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act dollar to dollar, but we can provide a smart response. So we don't have to pick and choose everything in the Inflation Reduction Act and do as they are doing, whether drilling in the Arctic or not. However, we can respond smartly as Canadians. So some of the measures that were there, we have taken care of in our budget. Some of the measures that are there in the Inflation Reduction Act, we took care even before that Inflation Reduction Act came into being there by lobbying very heavily with the U.S. administration. So that is the reason, because of the lobbying effort, taking a Team Canada approach, that we were able to secure the subsidies and the incentives that the U.S. government announced in the IRA is applicable to all North American manufactured vehicles. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Des commentaires, l'honorable député de Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je remercie mon collègue pour son discours. Il y a beaucoup de gens dans notre société qui vivent des moments difficiles avec la hausse du coût de la vie. L'épicerie coûte de plus en plus cher, les loyers coûtent de plus en plus cher. C'est dur de vivre, de joindre les deux bouts. Pendant ce temps-là, il y a des super riches qui s'en mettent plein les poches, notamment les PDG des grandes chaînes d'épicerie qui gagnent des 5 millions, 12 millions, 13 millions de dollars par année. Est-ce que mon collègue ne trouve pas ça indécent que ces gens-là s'enrichissent sur la misère des autres, puis il ne trouve pas que ça serait une bonne idée d'avoir un impôt sur la fortune pour que ces grandes familles multimillionnaires payent finalement leur part pour avoir une société plus juste?
Honourable Member for Nepean has 50 seconds to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank my honourable colleague for that question. Fundamentally, everybody has to pay their fair share of tax. To help the vulnerable Canadians who are getting deeply affected by the rising cost of living, we have already taken several measures even before the budget and also in the budget. And, Madam Speaker, let's be very clear, we can't tax anybody to death. So we are collecting the taxes from the rich with the existing tax structure, which is, in my view, is quite adequate. But we are also at the same time investing in providing support to the vulnerable Canadians. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the